I came home early that Thursday. I remember the way the front door creaked open, the usual rhythm of my routine disrupted just enough to feel strange. I'd left work a couple of hours ahead of schedule, nothing major, just a slow day, and I figured Lindsay would be happy to see me. Maybe we'd catch an early dinner, unwind together. Instead, I walked into what felt like a stage already set without me. Our living room was full, Lindsay and her book club friends, the usual circle of wine-sipping, yoga pants-wearing women who met every other week to dissect novels and, apparently, their husbands too. What hit me first wasn't what they said. It was what they didn't say. No one turned. No one smiled. Not a single nod or hello. I stood there with my keys still in hand, and it was like I didn't exist. I might as well have been a coat rack. I looked at Lindsay, her legs crossed, glass of rose in hand, eyes flicking across the page of some hardcover like I wasn't even standing in front of her. Not even a twitch of acknowledgement. I cleared my throat. Nothing. One woman shifted in her seat, briefly glanced at me, then quickly returned to pretending I wasn't there. A chill spread through the room, one of those silences that aren't quiet at all. They're loud in a way that makes your skin prickle. I didn't push it. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and listened to the muffled voices downstairs, laughing, flipping pages, talking like I'd never walked in. It was surreal. Later that night, Lindsay came to bed with her earbuds in. Didn't speak. Didn't look at me. No kiss. Nothing. Just climbed under the covers, turned away from me, and disappeared into whatever she was listening to. The next day, it was the same. No good morning, no casual chatter while we got ready. She moved around me like a ghost, or maybe I was the ghost. A few days passed before I put it all together. This wasn't some bad mood or random cold shoulder. It was structured. It was planned. And when I checked her tablet one night, yeah, I'm not proud of it, I saw the messages. A group chat between Lindsay and her book club. Apparently, at last week's meeting, they'd had a vote. A literal vote. Whether or not to give me the silent treatment for a full 30 days. To teach him appreciation, one of them had written. Apparently, I didn't value her enough. That was the language they used. They said I'd gotten too comfortable, that I didn't recognize what I had. 4 of them voted yes. 1 said no. Lindsay? All in. She even added a thumbs-up emoji, like this was some cute group project. They laid out a strategy. No arguments, no confrontation, just removal. Emotional quarantine. A total erasure of my presence until I cracked, apologized, begged. They underestimated me. See, I don't break like that. I don't crumble under silence. I operate in it. I watch, I listen, and when I'm being manipulated, I notice. What they saw as punishment felt more like a window. For the first time in months, maybe years, I saw Lindsay without the noise. I saw how she carried herself when she wasn't performing affection. I saw the calculation behind her glances, the way her fingers danced across her screen in the mornings, already in the group chat before I'd even had coffee. I watched her rehearse detachment like it was a role she was born to play. And I played along. I didn't protest. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask why. I just matched her energy, day by day. No expression, no affection, nothing to feed the fire they were hoping to light. It started to show in her eyes around day 5. A flicker of confusion. I wasn't groveling. I wasn't chasing. I didn't seem heartbroken. And that's when I realized, they didn't just want me quiet, they wanted me to break, to crawl back and admit some crime I hadn't committed. But what they didn't understand is, when you try to punish someone with silence, you better be sure they're afraid of being alone. I'm not. By day 2, the silence had settled into something less jarring and more calculated. The novelty of it wore off quickly, and I stopped wondering when Lindsay would crack and start talking again. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. If they wanted to play games, fine. I'd play too. But I'd play by my own rules. That morning, I made my usual coffee, the one I always brewed for both of us. Medium roast, ground fresh, 2 cups set out without even thinking. It had been part of our rhythm for years. But this time, I stopped halfway. I stared at the second mug, paused, and then slowly placed it back in the cabinet. I poured myself a perfect cup, just one, and didn't say a word. I sipped it slowly in the kitchen, let the rich smell fill the room. Lindsay walked in a few minutes later, earbuds still in, hoodie on, face neutral. She opened the fridge, glanced at the empty counter, and then at me. I didn't flinch. Just kept sipping. The faintest shift in her brow told me everything I needed to know. She noticed. Good. When lunch rolled around, I usually made us both something, sandwiches, leftovers, whatever we had. Not today. I ordered myself takeout from that Vietnamese place down the street. The one she always called our favorite. I got the grilled pork vermicelli, extra sauce, spring rolls on the side. When it arrived, I didn't eat at the table. I sat on the couch, Netflix on, living room bathed in the smell of lemongrass and garlic. She came down at some point, hovered in the kitchen for a while, clearly looking for signs of something shared, something meant for two. There was nothing. I didn't speak. I didn't look at her. I just enjoyed every bite with deliberate care. Dinner was even more intentional. I cooked, and not just anything. I made steak. A thick ribeye, dry rubbed and reverse seared to perfection. Garlic butter mushrooms on the side, mashed potatoes with roasted garlic, a glass of red from the bottle we'd been saving for something special. I plated it with precision, restaurant quality, and set it down in front of myself at the table. Only one plate. No second setting. No offer. I ate slowly. Purposefully. Lindsay walked by, paused, and I caught the way her eyes settled on my plate just a little too long. She tried to play it off, kept walking, but I saw it. That look. Hunger, sure. But more than that, surprise. Disbelief, maybe. She had expected me to sulk. To wait for her to stop this act. To beg for a scrap of warmth. Instead, I was thriving. That night, I didn't even bother getting into bed at the same time. I stayed up late, played music, caught up on a few things I'd been meaning to do around the house. Little stuff I usually let slide. She went to bed alone, the quiet between us thick, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was weightless, almost freeing. If I was invisible, then I was free. Free from the obligation to serve. Free from the need to keep things running smoothly just to avoid tension. Free to live on my own terms, even within my own home. Over the next couple of days, the pattern solidified. I made every meal just for myself, cooked with ingredients I knew she liked but didn't offer a bite. The moment she glanced toward my plate, that faint, involuntary twitch of interest or craving, I knew, this wasn't going how they'd planned. She thought silence would humble me, make me more attentive, more grateful. What she got instead was a version of me that operated independently and didn't look back. The small shifts in her routine were subtle but revealing. She started making her own coffee, but she always hesitated for a second, like she was expecting it to be there waiting, like muscle memory hadn't caught up with reality yet. She began ordering food, but it was never quite what she wanted. I could tell because sometimes she'd leave most of it untouched, pick at it absent-mindedly while I finished a meal I clearly enjoyed. She moved through the house like someone unsure of their footing. The power she thought she held was slipping, and fast. She wasn't punishing me, she was isolating herself. And in that space she created, I started to breathe again. The silence that was meant to crush me became the silence that sharpened me. I wasn't lonely. I was clear. She stopped speaking. So did I. But the difference was, I didn't need to be heard to feel whole. She did. Every moment that passed without a word became a mirror. She had no idea that while she was trying to control me with absence, I was reclaiming every inch of my presence. On the fourth day of silence, I opened the closet in the guest room, the one we hadn't touched in almost 2 years. The air inside smelled stale, like forgotten things. It took a bit of digging, past piles of fabric, bins labeled scrapbook ideas, half-used yarn, and some untouched watercolor kits Lindsay swore she'd use one day. Near the bottom, in a plastic storage bin with a cracked lid, I found what I was looking for, my camera gear. It was all there, my old Nikon body, a few prime lenses, memory cards in a rusted Altoids tin, and the faded leather strap with my initials still etched into it. I sat on the floor for a long moment, just holding the camera in my hands. The weight of it hit something in me, something I hadn't felt in years. It used to be mine, not just the camera, but what came with it. The early mornings chasing fog over quiet fields, the long walks through the city at night with my eye always hunting for light and contrast. Photography had been a piece of me, a huge one, until it slowly got pushed aside. Lindsay never told me to stop. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she chipped away at it. Every hobby-related purchase was met with a sigh. Every plan for a photo outing became a source of passive-aggressive tension. Another Saturday lost to that camera, she once said, not even looking up from her tablet. Over time, I just stopped picking it up. It felt easier than defending it. But now, in this strange quiet war she'd launched, the space was mine again. I set the gear on the table, cleaned every lens, formatted the cards, charged the batteries. That weekend, while she sat on the couch watching a baking show with the sound turned too low to hear, I slipped out before dawn. I drove out past the city limits and found myself on the edge of a field, mist curling around fence posts like something alive. I stood in silence for 20 minutes, watching the sky bloom into orange. Then I started shooting. It was like breathing again. My hands remembered how to work the manual settings without thinking, how to chase the right exposure, how to frame a shot so the image told a story without needing a caption. I took hundreds of photos that weekend: sunrise landscapes, street portraits of early dog walkers, long exposures of car trails downtown. I walked for hours, camera slung across my shoulder, no pressure, no commentary in my ear. Just me and the world, one frame at a time. Back home, I edited in silence, headphones in, light from the screen painting my face. I used to have a little office set up in the spare room for this exact purpose, but Lindsay had converted it into her craft space. Now, it was mine again. I cleared the clutter, shoved the boxes of unused supplies into a corner, and reclaimed the desk. She passed by once, slowed down, and I knew she saw the open photo editor. She lingered behind me for just a beat too long. I didn't turn around. I kept adjusting curves and color balance, zooming in on details, each photo sharpening with every pass. By Monday, I had uploaded a few shots to an old portfolio account I hadn't touched in years. A few likes trickled in, then a message from someone asking if I was available for prints. I didn't reply immediately. I just stared at the screen for a moment, surprised at how quickly the world started responding once I re-entered it. I was building something again, not just a hobby, but a self I thought had been buried for good. That evening, Lindsay had her friends over again. The same wine, the same posture, the same pretending I didn't exist. But I caught a moment, a whisper, barely audible, from one of them. "This seems extreme," she said, her voice cautious. She wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Lindsay's campaign of silence, the strategy they'd all agreed on like it was some experiment. I didn't smile. I didn't react. But I felt it, a crack. They were starting to see it. That this wasn't discipline. It was sabotage. And it was unraveling. The man Lindsay tried to shelve away in a closet, along with his lenses and old dreams, was back. And every day she refused to speak, she gave him more room to breathe. By the end of the first week, I was already functioning in a different rhythm. I wasn't just adapting to the silence anymore, I was using it. Without the constant undercurrent of judgment, passive remarks, or performative affection, I could think clearly for the first time in what felt like years. And with that clarity came an awareness of things I had overlooked, things I had trained myself to ignore because confrontation always led to drama. One of those things was money. We had a shared expenses account. The idea was simple: we'd both contribute to cover bills, groceries, household needs, whatever fell under us. I had set it up 2 years ago, back when I still thought we were building a partnership. I never monitored it that closely. I had a decent salary, and Lindsay, while working part-time and occasionally freelancing, always said she was doing what she could. I let that stand. I let it all stand. Until now. One night, while she was upstairs in bed, earbuds in as usual, I opened our joint banking history on my laptop. I don't know what made me do it, maybe boredom, maybe something deeper. But once I started, I couldn't stop. I pulled 3 months of statements, sorted them by category, and began tracing the flow of money, what came in, what went out, and who was really contributing. The truth hit harder than I expected. I was paying nearly 2.5 times more into that account than she was. And what made it worse wasn't just the imbalance, it was what the money was being used for. The shared expenses account was covering our internet, sure, and utilities, but also a bi-weekly wine subscription under her name. It covered her $300 monthly book club contribution, which I discovered was essentially a rotating event fund for their dinners, snacks, gifts, and whatever else those meetings turned into. Hundreds of dollars per month were going to online craft suppliers, fabric bundles, stencils, paints, expensive specialty paper, all piling up in bins she never opened. I saw transactions from stores I didn't even recognize. And all of it was being pulled from a pool I was mostly filling. So I did what I knew would make an impact. I made a spreadsheet. I listed every expense, color-coded by category: essentials, personal use, shared benefit, frivolous. I added a column showing what percentage each of us contributed monthly and what percentage each of us consumed. The disparity was obvious. At the bottom of the page, I added one sentence in bold: "New budget starts next month." I printed it, placed it on the kitchen counter next to her tea mug, and walked away. I didn't say a word. She didn't react immediately. For the first part of the morning, she acted like nothing was different. She poured her tea, scrolled on her phone, gave me the same cold shoulder. But then she saw the paper. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. Her hand froze on the handle of her mug. She stood there for longer than necessary, reading every line. I saw her lips press into a tight, bloodless line. She didn't speak, couldn't, still sticking to her little plan, but her body language told me everything. Her posture straightened. Her breath caught. Her hand trembled slightly when she put the paper back down. That night, the energy shifted. She wasn't just silent now, she was rattled. She overcompensated with noise in other ways, moving louder, sighing dramatically, slamming a cabinet once or twice. But still, not a word to me. Not a single sound directed my way. Just an increasing tension, a barely contained frustration leaking through every movement. I knew why. That spreadsheet wasn't just a budget, it was a mirror. It reflected the imbalance she had benefited from for years, the one she assumed I'd never question because I'd never questioned it before. But those days were done. Every reclaimed dollar was another thread cut from the web she'd spun. Her illusion of control wasn't built on force, it was built on assumption. That I'd keep giving. That I'd keep serving. That I'd stay quiet while she dictated the terms of our life together. That I'd never hold up a ledger and say, "This isn't fair." Now she knew I was keeping score. The next week, I cooked even better meals. Went on more photo shoots. Ordered myself new camera gear with my own funds. Didn't say a word about any of it. I even booked a one-day photography workshop across town. No discussion. Just a calendar block on the fridge. Meanwhile, she started digging through the closet again, pulling out her old supplies, trying to look busy, creative, purposeful, trying to match the energy I'd reclaimed. But it was too late. I was no longer looking at her for direction. I was looking at the man she had tried to smother under routine, under guilt, under silence, and watching him come back to life. It started with a simple thought: maybe I should update my photography website. The idea came to me late one night, long after Lindsay had gone to bed, still faithfully wearing her earbuds, still pretending I didn't exist in the house we both occupied. I sat at my desk, surrounded by prints from my recent shoots, the hum of my laptop the only sound in the room. My portfolio hadn't been touched in over a year, and I figured if I was going to start sharing my work again, it was time to clean things up, new images, new bio, maybe even revisit old contacts. I logged into the email account tied to the site, the one I hadn't touched in months. The inbox was dusty, full of promotional junk and the occasional automated update. I almost ignored the spam folder, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it open and began scrolling. At first it was the usual nonsense: SEO scams, fake collaboration offers, auto-generated newsletters. But then something stood out. A subject line: "Excited to feature your work, please confirm by Friday." It was dated 14 months ago. I opened it. It was from a small gallery downtown, the kind of place that hosts weekend exhibitions for emerging local artists. They were writing to confirm my participation in a show. My submission had been accepted, they loved the piece, and they were excited to include me. Except I had never seen this email. The next one was even worse. Another gallery, this time one I had actually dreamed of being part of, offering me a solo wall in a themed urban photography exhibition. They had reached out twice. The first message was warm and congratulatory. The second was more curt: "We understand if you've chosen not to participate, but please confirm your intentions." Both were buried in spam. My stomach dropped. This wasn't normal. These weren't just random misfilters. These were legitimate messages that had somehow been pushed into the trash bin of my professional life. And I knew why. Lindsay had access to this account. She helped me set it up. Back when we were partners, when she insisted on managing the business side of my hobby. It had seemed supportive at the time, a way to stay involved. But now, staring at these missed opportunities, the reality clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was sabotage. She had done it quietly, in the background. Probably logged in, flagged the emails, let them slip away unnoticed while I thought I just wasn't getting any traction. And I'd believed it. I'd told myself maybe my work wasn't that good, maybe I was wasting my time. I'd internalized that silence. Let it smother me. But not anymore. That night, I stayed up until dawn. I purged the old gallery and built a new one from scratch. I uploaded my best shots: sunrises, street portraits, city lights reflected in puddles, the quiet moments only a lens can catch. I rewrote my bio. Clean, honest, direct. I opened a new Instagram account, linked it to the site, and started posting daily. Within hours, followers trickled in. By the next day, messages started landing in my inbox again. Photographers I used to shoot with, people I hadn't spoken to in years, welcoming me back. A friend from college offered to connect me with a gallery he was curating for. Another invited me to join a collaborative shoot in the city that weekend. The momentum built fast, and with every message, something in me solidified. This wasn't just about reclaiming a hobby. It was about reversing damage. About digging myself out from under the weight of someone else's insecurities. Lindsay hadn't just tried to mute my art, she'd tried to rewrite the narrative of my potential. She had quietly rearranged my world so that I would stop believing I had won outside of her. But now I had proof. Concrete, time-stamped evidence of what she'd done. And that evidence didn't make me sad. It didn't even make me angry. It set me free. Because guilt, the one thing that had kept me tethered, that quiet voice whispering, "She's just trying her best," died right there in that spam folder. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was moving with purpose, forward. Every email I answered, every gallery that replied, every new follower who commented on my work, it was all a step upward. This wasn't an escape. It was an ascent. I was no longer asking for space. I was taking it. By day 12, the silence didn't feel like tension anymore, it felt like clarity. Lindsay still hadn't said a word to me. She moved through the house like a stranger, her performance as committed as ever, earbuds in, head down, always in motion but never toward me. At first, it was a game. Then it became a tactic. Eventually, it revealed itself as a door, and I walked through it. That morning, I stood in the living room with a cup of coffee I brewed just for myself and looked at the light pouring through the blinds. It hit the hardwood floors like it was trying to show me something I'd refused to see for too long. I had changed. Not just adjusted. Not just adapted. I had stepped back into a version of myself that had been buried beneath years of careful compromise, the slow erosion of identity under the weight of someone else's comfort. She thought silence would punish me. It didn't. It clarified everything. I'd already signed the lease 2 days earlier. Found a one-bedroom loft across town with floor-to-ceiling windows, natural light from sunrise to sunset, and a tiny exposed brick corner I could turn into a studio. The moment I walked into that space, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't big. But it was mine. It didn't have her energy clinging to the walls. It didn't reek of control disguised as routine. It was blank and open, and for the first time in a long time, I could picture a future without her, and not feel fear, not even sadness. Just relief. So on that 12th day, while she was gone for her weekly yoga session, the one she always bragged about being sacred time, I moved out. I had already packed in secret. Every box had been organized, labeled, stacked in the garage behind her forgotten craft supplies. I borrowed a friend's truck, said nothing, made no dramatic exits. Just moved, piece by piece, quietly and completely. Books, clothes, camera gear, prints, even the half-finished photo series I'd started years ago and never showed her. Every belonging I took felt like reclaiming a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The last item I packed was a framed photo I had taken before we met, an empty road stretching out toward the horizon at dusk, light catching the lines just right, the kind of shot that made me fall in love with photography in the first place. I had hung it in our hallway for years, and she always made little comments about how it didn't match the color scheme. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in the front seat of my car, and then stepped back inside for one final task. On the kitchen counter, I left an envelope. No flowers, no drama. Just a letter. I placed it dead center, right where she always laid out her weekly meal plans and book club flyers, like it belonged there. On the front, her name. Inside, a single page, handwritten. I didn't need paragraphs. Just a few lines. Invisible means gone. Divorce papers arrive Friday. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. She'd know. That was the moment everything shifted for good. She had given me 12 days of silence. 12 days to pretend I didn't exist. 12 days where she thought absence would teach me a lesson, pull me back into orbit around her needs. But all she did was give me the space I needed to remember who I was before her, and to realize I liked that man better. I respected him more. I closed the door behind me without a second glance. There was no explosion. No begging. No last-minute confrontation. Just absence, sharp and deliberate. The same weapon she had chosen, turned in my hands, now used with finality. She had tried to erase me. All I did was finish the job, and walk away whole. The first message came in less than an hour after I walked out. I heard it buzz while I was unloading the last box at the new place. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it would be. The silence had shattered the second she realized I'd really left, and now she was scrambling to fill the void with noise. The call came next, then another. Then a voicemail. And another. By the time I had set up my desk and plugged in my monitor, there were 10 missed calls and 3 voicemails waiting. I didn't listen to a single one. I blocked her number and kept moving. But Lindsay wasn't done. She couldn't let go of control without trying to claw it back first. The next morning, a text came from an unfamiliar number. "Can we talk?" 2 minutes later, another. "Please, Brandon. Just 5 minutes." Then came the ones layered with guilt. "You didn't even give me a chance. This is ridiculous. You're being cruel." I blocked those numbers too. I watched the pattern unfold with the same detached focus I used when editing a photo. She couldn't stand not being able to pull the strings anymore. She had thought the silence would force me to crawl back, beg for closeness, learn my lesson. But now she was the one alone, and every wall she had built to shut me out had become a mirror she couldn't bear to look into. Then came the doorbell camera alerts. She showed up at my old house 2 days later. The app pinged me while I was out walking the city, camera in hand, sun setting in long orange ribbons across glass buildings. I opened the app and there she was, standing on the porch like she still belonged there, like she hadn't spent 2 weeks pretending I didn't exist. She rang the bell 3 times, waited, then pulled out her phone and made a call. Another alert. Another voicemail. I blocked that number too. The real turning point came when her friends started messaging me, first one, then another, awkward, hesitant texts that read like damage control. "Hey, I just wanted to check in. Lindsay's really upset." Or, "Maybe you two just need to talk it through." But I didn't engage. I knew exactly what this was. She wasn't just reaching out, she was activating the same network that had voted to ghost me in the first place. The book club jury that thought they could teach me appreciation. Only now the roles were reversed. Now they were seeing her spiral, not me. Eventually, even they began to crack. One message stuck out. I told her this was a bad idea. "You can't just ignore your husband for 2 weeks and expect him to stay." That was when I knew the tide had turned. The silence she weaponized had become a crater under her feet, and no one was willing to throw her a rope anymore. By the end of the week, she was calling from burner phones. I'd recognize the area code, then block it before the first ring ended. Sometimes a voicemail would slip through before I could block the number. I never listened to them all the way. Just the first few seconds, always some version of the same, "Brandon, please. I made a mistake. Just come home." But I wasn't going back to a place where I had to shrink to be tolerated. I wasn't going to sit across from someone who thought my silence was a tool for reform and hers was a form of power. She had gambled everything on me folding. Instead, I built a life on the very foundation she tried to destroy. I responded only once. I crafted the message carefully. Not angry. Not emotional. Just truth, distilled. "I'm safe. I'm happy. I'm free." That was it. I sent it. Then I blocked the last number. Deleted the thread. Changed my email. Set everything to private. The man she tried to bury beneath convenience and quiet was gone, and not in hiding, not in retreat. He was thriving, rising, existing loudly in a life he had rebuilt with his own hands and his own eyes. She lost a husband. I gained myself. 6 months passed, but it didn't feel like time, it felt like motion. Like breath after holding it for too long. My days no longer began with tension or ended in silence. I woke up to light pouring through the windows of my loft, the city humming outside, and my camera waiting on the desk like an extension of my own eyes. I had routines again, real ones. Mornings editing, afternoons walking the streets with my lens, evenings at galleries or rooftop meetups with other artists. But none of it felt like escape. It felt like emergence. Like being pulled out of a dark space and realizing you had painted the walls yourself, just to survive in there. The first gallery show was small, but it hit like a thunderclap. A friend I had reconnected with invited me to submit a few prints to a joint exhibit on modern isolation, images that reflected solitude in urban spaces. I didn't even hesitate. I chose 3 shots from the month I left, one of an empty streetlight haloed in fog, another of a woman staring through a rain-smeared train window, and the third, my favorite, a self-portrait taken in the reflection of a dirty glass wall, blurred at the edges. The show sold out. My photos drew attention. People started asking questions. Who was I? Where had I been? What else did I have? From there, it moved fast. More shows. Invitations. Print sales started coming in regularly. I started mentoring 2 younger photographers, one still in college, the other balancing a job and a dream. I saw parts of my old self in them, the hesitation, the need for permission to make art that mattered. And I gave them the only truth I had: no one's going to hand you freedom. You take it. You carve it out of the silence others wrap around you, and you build a life in that space. I traveled, too. Shot the foggy marshlands in Savannah. Chased golden hour through Austin. Spent a long weekend in New Orleans photographing old jazz clubs and cigarette smoke catching beams of light like ghosts. I started dating again, casually at first. No expectations, no wait. Just honesty. It was strange at first to be seen again, really seen, and not as someone to be managed or reshaped. I took my time. I didn't explain the past. I didn't have to. Then, one afternoon, I stopped into a coffee shop downtown after shooting a mural project nearby. The place was crowded, the line long. I stood there, flipping through photos on my camera, only half paying attention. Then I felt it. A shift. The kind of pause you can't explain, the way the air seems to hesitate before catching up. I looked up, and there she was. Lindsay. She was sitting by the window, alone. A paperback in her hand, untouched coffee on the table. Her hair pulled back in a way that looked practiced but tired. She saw me the same moment I saw her. Our eyes met. For a second, nothing moved. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She looked like she was holding her breath. Maybe waiting for something. A nod, a word, anything. But I gave her nothing. I looked away. Turned back to the counter. Ordered my drink. Sat on the far side of the room, behind a pillar, and didn't glance in her direction again. That was her closure. Not a confrontation. Not a speech. Just that look, and the space after it. Sometimes I tell people about it, the ones who've asked what happened or how I got started. I don't give them the full story, but I give them the truth that matters. She tried to make me invisible, I say, usually with a half smile, so I disappeared. And it was the best decision I ever made. Because the truth is, I didn't lose anything. I found everything. In the stillness. In the darkness. In the moment I stopped asking for space and started taking it. My work lives on walls now. In frames. In homes. In galleries with soft lighting and quiet gasps of strangers who see something in a photo that speaks to their own story. My name is on the placards. My life is my own. And I am not invisible. Not anymore.